The college football apostles is here. And this is the Better Call Saul episode because the legal and business issues are dominating college football. Make sure that you guys like, subscribe, tell a friend about the show, and most importantly, share so we can keep bringing you dope college football content because this is the spot for college football here on Unafraid Show on the College Football Apostles. Let's get to the show, baby. I'm George Reister. He's Ralph Amsden. And the first topic today is Jaden Rashada. Boy, oh boy, there is a lawsuit out against the University of Florida, against their booster, and against Billy Napier. And I've known that this is coming for quite some time. However, when it hit the airwaves, it kind of reignited the whole Jaden Rashada saga and kind of the narrative about him as a kid. But Ralph, I've been looking at this as more the entire time as an issue of why name, image, and likeness is so important and why it needs to come out of the dark alleys and the dusty corners and everything else because of reasons like this. And it's not just for the protection of the players, but it's for the protection of the boosters and the school and everybody as well. When you have a contract that you sign that is not enforceable legal, well, technically it's enforceable legally potentially because you are now having a lawsuit about it, but it's not something that you would bring to light because technically it was an inducement. And technically it can get the school in trouble. So nobody wanted this. But if everything is out on Front Street, now it's a whole different story.
Yeah, as somebody who covers Arizona State and went to Arizona State, it's been interesting watching, people say that, like, there's been a group of Arizona State fans that have said, like, I'm glad Jaden Rashada is gone because look at this drama he would have brought to us suing Florida former Arizona State offensive coordinator Billy Napier, while he's at Arizona State. I beg to differ on the grounds that, like, what is dramatic about someone said they would pay you money, you both signed a contract, and then the money didn't come.
Yeah.
In any situation, you would want to recoup that or at least protect the next generation of football players that are coming up from getting themselves into situations like that. And unfortunately, civil legislation is a good way to make sure that a lot of those rules can get shored up because technically, like you brought up, a lot of the things that were happening weren't necessarily inside the bounds of what NIL was meant for. But if you told a kid he was going to get paid, They both signed on the dotted line, and then the payment did not come. What are we doing here?
Yeah, because they've made Jaden Rashada out to be this unstable, switching schools. Like, it's very interesting to me because he was committed to Miami first, then he flipped to Florida. How uncommon is that, Ralph?
That's very common, but I don't think he would have ever flipped in the first place had there not been the biggest offer in the history of college football sent his way.
Exactly. And then he ends up asking for his release and then going to Arizona State. And this is late in the game. Like, the signing period has already passed. So the amount of spots that are available is very narrow at this point in time. So then
his dad went to ASU.
Yeah.
His dad was there.
Yeah.
And they didn't tell him that he could have anything.
Nope.
They just said, like, hey, we got a spot for you to come in and compete if you want to.
And that's the thing is that he went that, like, this is the problem with this whole narrative is that he was painted out to be this money hungry kid when he went to Arizona State without promises of huge money and all of this stuff. He went to Arizona State because he knew Arizona State. There were limited options. Like, it wasn't even necessarily that was going to be the best fit for him. It just kind of worked in the moment. And if it worked out, cool. And if not, no. And when he left and went to Georgia, there were bigger offers on the table, like significantly. Because the way Kirby Smart handles his whole roster is that like Georgia has about a little under $13 million that they have in their collective for the year to be able to divvy out to players.
Mm-hmm.
And you have the top of the food chain, which is Beck, the quarterback, 7-figure guy. Then it goes down from there. And Kirby and the way that they do it at Georgia, this the way they used to do it at Ohio State. They've switched up just a little bit. And a few other places, Bama has been similar typically, is that there's a base amount that your highly recruited guys get, which is a very low amount compared to what is out there in the media. And then once you become a guy, now you have opportunities to make significantly more money just from the collective. And that's not coming from outside. And that's not including, getting a Zaxby's or a car dealership or any, like, this is just coming straight from their collective that's associated with the school. So now back to the Rashada thing for a second.
Mm-hmm.
There was a payment due in the beginning of December, according to their lawsuit, of like 500 and some odd $1,000. He signs the letter of intent toward the end of December, around somewhere between the 18th and the 21st, somewhere around there. And the payment was missed. And then promises were made. Okay, no, the money's coming, the money's coming, the money's coming. And we have fans talking about, oh man, we want kids that want to be here. You shouldn't be here for the money. And imagine if you showed up at a job, right, that you wanted to be there, and then they were supposed to give you your upfront signing bonus, because some people get signing bonuses for regular jobs, or they'll start your pay early because you are because you were recruited and you're finishing another job, you want to take some time in between, anything like that. And then that money does not show up on time, even though it's a job that you want. How are you now going to feel about the potential for everything that you were promised in this job and the truthfulness of those involved to be there?
You wouldn't. You wouldn't. And the most sinister part about all of this is the hope from Florida's end. And maybe someone will come along and disagree with me, but it seems to be consensus. The hope on Florida's end is that he would break his end and leave.
Yep.
They didn't want to be on the hook for $13 million.
Yep, that's exactly what happened.
Nor was it wise.
No.
It was not wise to set the market with a high school kid.
Yeah, and well, it started with the
Tennessee, right? Tennessee did this first.
Yeah, with Nico Iamaleava, which was reported to be about $8 million. And I've talked to, like, being out here in Cali, you have access to people, and people are in your circles and stuff like that. And it's well, let's just say that what's reported is not all what what exactly it was. Mm-hmm. Okay, but check this out. Now, so the market was initially set there.
Okay.
And now with that, and then you had an arms race, like, yeah, we're gonna do this with the collective, and people pledged money to these collectives and then didn't pay that money. Because obviously in 2020 we had a 2020, 2021, like, we've had some financial crisis in certain areas of the country, mm-hmm. and in certain sectors, and people's businesses have downturned. People who pledged money have personal events, they get divorced, and all of a sudden them pledges turn to zero, or they turn to different amounts of money. And I think that this brings up a legal issue for Florida, right? Because on one hand, Billy Napier, who's named in the lawsuit, coaches are aware of everything that happens in their program, or at least generally aware, or they're like, listen, I understand that that's going on. I don't want to know about it so I can have plausible deniability, which to me is knowing about it. If you're saying, nope, 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 have that conversation outside the door, you know the conversation is happening.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Billy Napier, from my understanding, is not really on board with that whole system, right? Of
Right.
of of the inducements and like especially at this amount of money, like that he wasn't down with it.
Right.
However, he's in charge of the situation. And when you are in a position like Billy Napier is in, where Florida has not achieved the level of success that Florida fans had hoped up to this point in time. Can we agree on that?
That is absolutely true. Yeah, he's on the chopping block if they don't
Yes.
improve.
So, and their over under, which we went over in the other episode, which you guys can check out here on Unafraid Show, is 5 games. They have an extremely tough schedule on paper. And if they win 5 games, 7 games, he's probably like, there's a potential that he can get fired. Well, if they win 5 games, he's probably getting fired.
Mm-hmm.
So, couldn't the school use this as an opportunity? Because, mind you, NIL is legal now, but it was not at that point in time. And he's not winning enough to where they can pull what Kansas did and just throw the middle finger up to the NCAA and the infractions committee and everything else and keep
Right.
their head coach in basketball, Bill Self. They're probably more in line to do what LSU did with Will Wade. And if you can fire Billy Napier for cause and keep and say we did something, now you get a chance to keep that buyout money, and you get a chance to put out a public face of, listen, we're doing the right thing and we're fixing it around here.
Right.
And you get a fresh start with a new coach, which will then energize the fan base a little bit. But you can't fire him now, Ralph. You can't fire him now. Why? Because we're too far away from the season, and that opens up the transfer portal. And if you fire him, you may lose DJ Lagway. You may lose Cormani McClain, who just signed there. Like, you can lose a lot of your roster of your high-end guys just bouncing to places that they know that they can go in and start at immediately.
But you know that there's administrators at Florida who are looking at this lawsuit right now and they're saying, this might get us out of a buyout.
Yep. Yeah.
Like,
yes.
That's what you got. That's what you got to understand. Like, there are players on all sides of this chess game that is college football, right? Like,
yeah,
you're gonna have people at Florida who don't. Like, you know who this is mean, but you know who's looking at this Florida situation with eyebrows raised?
Who?
Jed Fish. Because if there's enough people at Florida who are like, maybe this Jaden Rashada lawsuit that named Billy Napier in saying that he promised $1 million to Rashada, even though the $500,000 payment never came.
No, Jed's not leaving Washington for Florida. No, say it ain't so.
That's his alma mater, my guy. And so it's one of those things that if somebody at Florida is like, man, we could get Jed Fish, especially if we don't have to pay a buyout. But
and use what we were going to pay to buy it, because his contract at Washington is very Jed Fish friendly in terms of buyout.
Yeah. But then it's like, well, how much are we going to be liable for to have to pay to the Rashada family?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Because this lawsuit is going to settle. This lawsuit is going to settle.
It has to. You don't want discovery in this.
You absolutely do no.
Like, you don't want to find out what somebody... So, collectives are not allowed to coordinate with coaches.
Yes. You are going to open up a can of dusty corners that nobody wants opened up.
Every collective in the country is coordinating with the coach.
Yes.
Every single one.
Yeah.
And so... and that's why everybody needs to be careful.
Yes.
Because if you're out here lying to kids and you miss payments and they decide to take it to civil court, and then you get put in a position where your texts are going to get called into question, and then you have X figure head of collective and you have head coach regularly text messaging back and forth about the amounts that they want players to get paid. Why do you think they're trying to move the collectives in-house?
Okay.
So that
Right.
they're not subjected to these technical illegalities, but you just don't want to be found out in discovery while the NCAA still has
Well,
enough
here's the
power
other
to mess your
problem, Ralph.
program up.
Here's the other problem is that discovery is the boogeyman. Because think about what happened in the college basketball Book Richardson scandal. Do you know how that started? It started because a financial advisor in Atlanta named Marty Blazer was getting investigated by, and he was a financial advisor for a bunch of professional athletes, got investigated by the FBI for stealing money and doing some stuff that he wasn't supposed to do. And Marty was like, I know what's going on over here. That's how Hugh Freeze got caught at Ole Miss. Doing stuff. Discovery of something completely different. And now all of a sudden, somebody runs across a text message unrelated, and they're like, why the hell did he say the one time that he said something, text something that he shouldn't have text? And then they're like, no, other phone. Or, oh, my bad. And now you're like, what the hell does this mean? Now I'm searching through text for other stuff. And now I'm gone down. And you know how investigative people are. Like I'm talking about the people that can't be bought. Like the people that can only be bought by the truth. That where
Mm-hmm.
I always say everything is for sale, everything is not on sale. And the price sometimes is not money. It's not what you can pay. It's something, sometimes the price is something that you can't afford or that you don't want the most. And
I
then,
always tell my kids, George, and maybe you identify with this too. I always tell my kids, I'm like, something as simple as throwing your dirty clothes on the floor is going to invite your mother into your room to start cleaning up.
yep,
What else
and
she gonna find?
yep.
What else she gonna find? So either
Then
put
she
your dirty
finds the
clothes in the
nudie
cupboard.
magazine, the
Yeah.
condom, the joint. Now, I'm not saying that that's what your kids are doing, but I'm just
No,
saying
but
like that, like yeah,
that's my point. Like you're gonna invite the
like
cops into
what's
this
this?
situation because
Yeah, they're
yeah.
just like they're not even looking for anything in particular. Like, oh, let me pick up this shirt. Wait, hold on. What's that yellow thing sticking out? Are these panties? Are this is this a or like why is this fork up under here? Oh, let me get this fork. Wait, hold up. What the hell? Oh my God. Now all of a sudden,
Hey, you know who the best drivers in the world are?
who is
Drug
that?
mules. Drug mules.
Well, sometimes because them fools sometimes they be breaking laws, driving, speeding. They
Yeah, well,
do
but that's what I'm saying. Were you gonna speed with drugs in the car?
exactly.
So this is
Um,
what I'm talking about. Is like you never want to invite any like a scope creep of investigations. It's such a good point that you made because it can always go sideways. Always.
yep,
They got Al Capone on tax evasion.
exactly. And this is why the whole NCAA antitrust lawsuit is significant. So up to this point, the all the Power Five schools have agreed, except for the Pac-12, which they're expecting is going to as well. And this is going to be 2.7, 2.8 billion dollars in settlements. And you're like, okay, so why are they even doing this? And this goes to future and past payments of players for their NIL and things like that. They're settling because they have to settle. The
Mm-hmm.
NCAA has gotten their ass kicked in court by Ed O'Bannon over 10 years ago. They've gotten their ass kicked. Austin versus the NCAA every other time. So the value of a scholarship used to be capped at the cost of attendance, and now it's not. So that means they can buy computers, they can buy any ancillary thing that you need for school, and your stipend can technically be higher than whatever it was, right? So you have that on one hand. Now, on the other hand, you have, yeah, so you have that on one hand. Now, on the other hand, you have the NCAA, which has not, like, it was built upon a system of amateurism where the value of a scholarship used to outweigh the revenue that the players were generating to bring in. But with the TV money, since I was playing, has increased. The donorship has increased. Coaches' salaries increased. And the people generate, and players couldn't even make money on their own at that point in time. So that was never going to hold up to a legal challenge because there is no other place in the country where that is okay. So now this antitrust lawsuit, which is going to be settled, and this is going to bring collectives in house. There's going to be more transparency, which, to the Jaden Rashada point, this is necessary for the protection of the schools, for the protection of the players, because if you actually have real contracts that are above board and enforceable, you know what's going to happen, Ralph? There is going to be, like, they're not going to be able to promise one guy coming out of high school $500,000 when their starting running back is getting $250,000. Like, now you're actually gonna, like, it's actually gonna bring things to a more equitable state, which is what fans really want. Like, it's the same thing that happened in the NFL. Because when I came into the NFL, you had the Sam Bradfords, you had all these young hotshot quarterbacks getting drafted, making more than the players who were winning Super Bowls and going to Pro Bowls and being all pros. And they hadn't taken a snap yet. So then the players were like, nah, we don't like this. And the owners were like, cool, we don't like it either, because some of them don't pan out. So then the rookie wage scale comes in. And now the players who produce on the field, or at least, in some cases, that they believe will produce, those are the people who get the huge second contracts. And then the players who are rookies and still earning them, and younger players, they can't get a new contract until after 3 years. So it's created a more equitable system, even though it's not perfect. It's created a more equitable system where there is a tiered system for where you are in the pecking order, which is going to create less drama and also allow teams to keep their rosters more in order because of the lack of jealousy and transparency.
What would you think of this? And I know this is complicated, but I want everything to be above board. I don't think Billy Napier's a bad guy. I know Jaden Rashada's a good kid. Like,
yep.
So this whole idea that there's even a villain involved in this, like, no, this is a dispute that needs adjudicated. The end. So what would you think of this? That somebody comes in to college on a 2-year contract, and the third year team option, fourth year player option.
Absolutely not.
Because typically, if you're good enough, you're going to leave school after 3 years. Yeah. Right? So, and a lot of these kids come in with college credits or have a way to graduate in 3 years. It's becoming more common than not for kids to enroll early.
Yeah, Justin Martin just graduated UCLA this spring.
Yeah, your boy Tyler Shuck's about to get his 5th college degree.
Yeah.
Turning 24 at Louisville this year. So, and he was an early enrollee too.
Yeah.
So, this whole thing of okay, if you sign a 2-year deal, everything's above board, everybody knows what you're making. And then the third year would be escalated quite a bit. Like, you're a starter, you're all conference. The team can option you into that third year, or you can transfer to try to get a different contract elsewhere. But if you spend 3 years, you had your team option enacted, it was an escalator, you got a lot more in NIL, you go into your fourth year and you're choosing NFL or stay in college. It's a team option, or it's a player option. You could continue what you got in year 3, or you could go to the NFL, but it's up to you.
I don't hate the idea, but I think I don't think that it's going to work. And I wouldn't want my kid to sign that for multiple reasons. One is what happens if you're Caleb Downs and he's a first year starter, All American? Now what?
Right.
Now what? Him. I mean, and I know that that's the outlier and not the norm, but and then two, I am and legally it would never hold up for players to unless there are outs in these contracts for if coaches leave like that
Right.
be a similar thing because coaches are under contract too.
Yeah.
And
But
so
I'm only talking about obligating the school, not the player. So the player could still transfer at any point. It would just break the contract.
oh, okay. See that's
But it would obligate the school because the primary issue that we're dealing with right now is the fact that the people who want things to stay the same are the people who want coaches to still be able to lie to kids.
yes.
Because that's what we're talking about. A lot of college football was built on coaches lying to kids. That's
Yeah.
it. And now that is what's
I'm
going
gonna
away.
be here. I'm gonna be here. I'm committed. You need to
Yeah.
be committed. We want people to, and then, whoop, out the door. And
Or we
and
see you getting reps at running back in year one when you know that they're in a meeting talking about moving this kid to safety.
yes,
Like
yep,
those are the levels of and anything to get a kid in the door because coaches are financially incentivized to lie to kids. If you can build a reputation as a collector, you're going to climb in this business. And if you
yep,
can build a reputation as a winner, as a head coach, you're going to have generational money. You're incentivized to lie.
yep,
It should what it should come down to is we should be able to find out who the best coaches are. It should
yes,
always be about finding out who the best coaches and developers are. And if you introduce a legislated monetary amount that kids are getting, we're going to find out who the best coaches are
yeah.
and the
Well,
best people are.
yep. So now there's another component to this antitrust lawsuit, which is who pays the money. So the way that the Power Five schools have all agreed to, and yes, the Power Five because the Pac-12 is still counted in this because it goes backwards. They were like, hell,
You're talking about all. So we just to let everybody know, we switch topics to the antitrust lawsuit that is like House versus the NCAA. You're talking about paying back people who
yes,
probably should have
correct,
been owed a
correct.
revenue share and in the future.
Yes, yeah, that's what we were
Okay.
talking about. Yeah. So there are 283 schools that come from the non-power five schools, the non-power five schools, 22 conferences.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are the five conferences, plus Notre Dame and a couple other independents. So you're talking about 69 schools. And the proposal was for those 69 schools to pay 40% of the bill of this $2.8 billion, 2.7, $2.8 billion, while they make 90 some percent of the money, like in between 85 and 90% of the money. That is, and so when the proposal came, which they were influencing, came out for them to pay 40%, and then the other 60% to be paid by the 283 who make a fraction of the money, and it would be reduced by an equal percentage, like 0.88% for everybody. They were like, hell yeah, hell yeah, hell yeah, sign us up, sign us up. and the other 22 conferences were like, hell no, you pay 58% and we'll cover the other 42. And it's funny how, and this just goes to show how people act out of their own self-interest. Because when the college football playoff came out and they were negotiating how much each conference was going to get as far as making the playoff and all of that, what did the Big Ten and the SEC say? Oh, we should do this by historically we've made the most college football playoff appearances, so we should get the most.
Dude,
And
the hypocrisy.
yeah,
Oh my God.
and then
now hitting me.
Yeah.
It's just now hitting me that they played both sides of the fence.
Yes, and then the non-power five schools like Cincy. Oh, you haven't really made it, so we'll give you a fraction because you only contributed just a fraction to the college football playoff. Oh, but now when it comes time to paying back, oh, listen, guys, this should be equal, 0.88%. The difference is that the SEC and the Big Ten are having record revenues. And while the FCS conferences are saying, we're looking at cutting 10% of our budget to fund your former players. So it's like the hypocrisy knows no bounds, Ralph. The hypocrisy knows no bounds. Oh, well, we need a bigger share of the new money. But of the old money, listen, this should be equal. We're partners, right? And the 22 conferences are like, no, but the 5 are going to say yes. And do you know what's going to happen? It is going to be a yes.
Yeah, so you have the way that the other 22 conferences, like you said, 283 teams, like their view of this is, first of all, like we're backdating money that we didn't even make, and it's coming out to be about 5 to 6% of our budget, while you're only paying 2% of your budget, and you make a lot more money. So, and I understand why the 69 schools that make up the Power Five would say, no, that's too much for us, because what the proposal from the smaller schools was talking about was moving the bigger schools from about a $1 million a year obligation to about 1.4. So it's a big bump. It's about $400,000. But what the little schools are saying is, we're paying 5 to 6% of our revenue. You're
Yes.
paying 2. Make that make sense when you guys are the ones historically that made the most money.
Yep.
You're right. You're right. Like the 283 schools are going to get railroaded in this, because the majority of the revenue that comes in goes through the Power Five. The funniest thing about all of this to me is, for Charlie Baker to lead the effort to say, like, yeah, you know what, based on these lawsuits that we're getting crushed with, we do need to have a revenue share model, because everything that we've ever accomplished is on the backs of the players. How about 2%?
They could have done this so long that Ralph, had the old commissioner just leaned into this instead of spending $100 million litigating these things. Just said, all right, dude, we're in trouble. It's a long shot. We're like that. Let's figure out a new model, because they could have actually had a model that was in place that would have lasted another probably 10, 15 years before that got blown up.
10 years ago, when we were talking about trust funds,
Yep.
how much do you think that would have delayed this process?
Oh my God,
if
dude!
NCAA
It would have stopped
said,
transfers as much, dude. It would have put
yeah,
such a yep. Dude,
you put
this is such a loser move.
Yeah, you could have put escalators in place for spending 3 to 4 years at a school, for
Yep.
getting your degree,
And it would have cost you way less money.
And
way
then you could
less
have dropped all that money on them when they were 23, or paid it over a graduated, 23 to 27 years old.
The NFL literally does this when they are negotiating the collective bargaining agreement, because there are over 2,000 players. Yes, there are the guys who make $100 million, but the vast majority of the players are at a median or below level. So if you raise up their salaries a lot, which is going to cost you way less than the top money, then those guys are going to vote yes, even if you're creating subpar, like we talked about the NFL schedule, which you guys should go check out that video, and how unequitable it is for the NFL and bad for the players' health and all of that stuff. But they agreed to it and are going to get 18 games soon without another bye week probably, because they raise the salaries, and then the people at the bottom, they're like, ooh, I get a chance to collect more money now. And they're not looking at the big picture, because they're not a part of the long-term solution. So that's what that they should have done from the beginning. Okay. So now that the NCAA antitrust lawsuit, but now there's another part that's factoring into this, which is there's a name that you may want to Google, but we'll tell you who this guy is. His name is Drew Weatherford. And this guy has been having conversations in private with over 50 athletic directors and power brokers in college football about private equity money. And you're like, George, how does this factor into this. Well, remember a few years ago when the Pac-12 was trying to find Larry Scott, the commissioner of the Pac-12, was like, listen, we're going to own all our rights. We're not going to sell them. We're not going to give somebody 50%. We're going to own all our own stuff. Well, that was a screw up. And then once he realized that, he was like, oh, maybe we'll go get private equity money. And so that's really where the first time that it came out in the media. Then Florida State trying to get out of their ACC grant of rights. Private equity money came into effect. So we've been slowly hearing this, but now it came out that this is happening. So this is just a feeler to see how this is going to work for people to investigate it, because the schools have already been looking at this. So, and they're looking to invest $50 to $200 million into, let's say, 5 to 10 programs or something like that. So what this means is private equity money, that's Wall Street money, that is like, private equity is about returns. I belong to a private equity group, an investing group, and you know what I care about? Money. I want my returns on the back end. So you know what that means? That means that these athletic departments that you guys want to be happy-go-lucky, let's amateurism. Nah, bro, that's big boy business. Now, like, that's even
literally
big boy
opposite. Literally the thing that you've been pushing back against this entire time.
Yes. This is big boy money that's not even like that. It takes what the business of the Better Call Saul episode now and 10x's it. Because as an investor, I don't care about the coach, because a lot of them aren't going to be college football people like that. Like, oh, it's in my heart. They are invested in returns. So now, if I am invested into an athletic department, $100-200 million, I get a huge say-so. So that means I get a say-so on who the coach is and what that contract looks like. So if we are hiring, let's say over at LSU, we're hiring Brian Kelly. He's got a $100 million contract, $2 million buyout if he leaves. There is not a snowball's chance in hell that if private equity money comes in, that coaches' contracts are going to look like they look with these buyouts, where they're one-sided. Because I know for my money, and I know the people that I work with, they're going to give a giant middle finger and be like, listen, we fire you because you ain't doing your job. Ain't not a nan, not a dollar we paying you, fam. Or it is going to be a nominal buyout. So you're going to have coaches' contracts change. You are going to have the spending on non-essential functions go down. Like, it is going to be run like a business.
Your recruiting budget's going to drop.
Or it'll stay the same if you're able to justify, like, if you can show why this turns into this, then you can get all the money in the world. Like, if you can show me how, if I spend an extra $500,000 a year, that this turns into $2 million a year in additional revenue, or even $1.5 million, which would be incredible, or even $1 million. Now, okay, cool. If you can generate me an extra $1 million for my $500,000, sign me up. But
I would much rather for the equity thing. Yes, there are some people that are concerned with returns, George, but there's also private equity that isn't not concerned as much with returns, and that's the one that scares me.
What do you mean?
Like, we gonna invite the Saudi prince into the SEC?
Ooh.
You think Live Golf is getting returns? Like, and what's going to stop some of these colleges from saying, like, no, let's just go get the most money we possibly can? I would rather the 69 top schools go public. I would rather them just be able to I would rather the rules change as far as athletic budgets, where it doesn't necessarily have to be dollar in, dollar out. And they were able, if I was able to buy 100 shares of Vanderbilt baseball or something like that, or Vanderbilt athletics, right? I'm able to buy 100 shares of Vanderbilt athletics. I'm now a Vanderbilt athletics stockholder. So it's not private equity, but you actually trade on a collegiate athletics stock market. and that can be affected by like the way that a school recruits, the way that a school wins, or it could be affected by the deals they sign with apparel companies, the amount of merchandise that they move. If we're going to take this thing like and put it on the marketplace, let's just put it all the way on the marketplace.
It definitely would, man. It would be a very different scenario, dude. Very different scenario. But it's people that
What
don't
would
want.
Oregon? What? How much would you go deep in on Oregon if Oregon was publicly traded?
Oh man, because the future is bright, dude. If this was a stock, I would have bought it when I was playing. I would have bought it when it was a penny stock, and it would be worth hundreds of dollars now. So I would own. I would be a very very rich man.
So what about that though? What about taking it public and giving your players stock options so that they're
Ooh.
actually invested in your college program
Oh my
moving forward?
gosh. And using, yes. So like you get stock options the longer that you stay there, or as bonuses and stuff like that. Yep. Yeah, yeah, that would put you in that Dan Lanning category because he got
I
some
would
Nike
take
stock.
all this over private equity. And for the people who don't know, Drew Weatherford, former Florida State quarterback, 39 touchdowns, 32 interceptions. He was in college just after you. Just after you, he was in college, and um he formed this private equity group with his brother, and you know we're familiar with it because Larry Scott had said that he wanted to sell off 10% of the Pac-12 for like 50 million or whatever, and he was never able to get that done. But I do wonder what the interest in market would be to just take this whole thing public. Like you could see the interest in major collegiate athletics through how people are choosing to invest in them, and the successful programs, their stock would be higher, and that could actually help influence recruiting, because to get stock options in Alabama would be a lot better than stock options in like a Maryland or something like that. No offense to Maryland.
And now square all of everything that you said, Ralph. On top of all of that, and the people who are like, oh, college football, the nostalgia, the the people being invested in it. Why are the players not invested in it? Because everybody else is treating it like a business. And so the players are like, we're the goofies for still pretending like it is how it was. So now there's a pushback. And especially when you look up at the news, $700 million. Penn State, $700 million invested into an upgrade of Beaver Stadium. So if you're a player and you're at Penn State and they're like, oh, there's no money, or you're a player at other and you see a $300 million stadium upgrade at Texas A&M plus booster money going up and everything else, enrollment, everything. Why the hell are you not, when you are Johnny Manziel, or you are at Penn State, and if Drew Aller balls out this year and decides not to go to the NFL, if he's like, nah, bro, I need like $3 million about you, fam. Like, or the other first round picks are like, I'm gonna need that bread about you. I don't know what to tell you. Otherwise, I'm out of here. And people look at that and they're saying there's something wrong with the player, but it's not anything
Mm-hmm.
wrong with the player, because you at your job, if you know that even though you love your job, you're happy with your job, if you bring in a contract or a deal, help bring it in, and you're a significant part of that, and it's a $700 million deal for the company, and they give you, and they, not even acknowledging it, they're like, hey, yo, we're gonna give you a couple extra steaks at dinner time. You're like, I'm happy with the steaks, cool, I appreciate that, but where the check at though? Because you
Right.
can't feed like Latrell Sprewell. I can't feed my family on this type of money, bro.
Latrell. Ugh.
So I mean, and this is going on all over the country because there was that arms race to upgrade facilities all over the country.
Right.
And then players, and then they're like, there's not enough money to pay the players. Our coach is getting $100 million or $80 million, $70 million, hundreds of $1 million upgrade. Yeah, but my parent is getting a bill for a medical procedure that I had while I'm at school, or my wisdom teeth being pulled. How that makes sense?
Yeah, and it's crazy to me. And I used to get in trouble all the time when I was like on the Arizona State beat because they underwent a $400 million 4-year stadium upgrade.
Yeah.
And I used to say all people care about is they don't want to piss in a trough and they want to be able to tinker around on their phones when they're in the stadium.
Yep.
Make sure people can get a good signal.
Wi-Fi. Yep.
Make sure people have access to bathrooms that don't make them feel gross. And if you can, come around to maybe selling some alcohol in the stadium so your students don't leave to go to Mill Avenue and then come back. And instead they make the entire place super fancy. They say that it's going to be multi-use, even though I think the only concert that's ever been there is Kanye West Sunday service. And they say that it's going to be multi-use. They invest all this money into this thing, and then like, no, we don't want to pay players. So you invested in your fans wanting to be more comfortable, which you're never going to be comfortable in that stadium. It's 150 degrees outside. So you invest all this energy in your fans being more comfortable. Yet every single thing that you and every college in the country does is actually to bow to the god of television.
Yep.
A lot of these upgrades to stadiums that have been made aren't even necessary because every school has been doing everything they could to be more attractive to TV stations, and they are actually neglecting what the fans actually want, and they're neglecting the game day experience. Because if you can get a giant check for your game being on TV, you're not worried about every single seat being sold out every single night. And you're also not worried about people being able to make plans or take their kids to games. You got Pac-12 schools kicking off at 8:30 p.m. George, how am I going to take my kids to a game at 8:30 when their bedtime's 9?
Hey man, you better let your kids stay up late. That's all I tell you during football season.
Everything they do has been in service to the god of mammon to get that money, and it comes from it comes from TV, and then on the other end, you're trying to make people happy that invest in your program by saying we're going to give you comfortable digs to sit in, but we're not going to respect you with trying to have consistent kickoff times and stuff. A lot of how the NFL got very, very popular because expectations were set. I know the NFL is moving away from that. But they got all the money in the world to play with. Colleges are crying broke. They're telling us they don't have the money. And at the same time, we're reading these headlines. Beaver Stadium is going to get $700 million infused into it. The whole thing is crazy. If all you ever read is headlines about how there's hundreds of millions of dollars coming in and you're the product, you're the player, what are you supposed to do?
Exactly. And speaking of $100 million headlines coming in, we found out that TNT is now going to broadcast multiple college football playoff games. And you're like, wait, hold up. I thought ESPN bought those rights. Yes, ESPN did. And they got smart. They were like, oh, because them and Fox are actually combining on an app and all of this stuff. They were like, oh, we can sub this out to people like TNT who pay big money for college sports. They already do it for the NCAA tournament and they see a major return. So they're like, oh, yeah, let's get into that business. You're going to have Netflix or Apple. I'm going to tell you, in the next 10 years, Netflix, which has 3 NFL Christmas Day games coming up. Netflix, which is trying to get into live programming. They just had 2 live programs with Tom Brady and then with Cat Williams. Those were testers. That is all they were about. It was not about anything else besides that being a test because they got to figure out if people will watch and how to support live sports. Apple wants in. They already got the MLS and Major League Baseball on Fridays. They want in this more. They want all in it. And that means that that's going to happen because they got more money. And the college football playoff, whether it's that one of those networks is going to get, and then you got Amazon for the NFL, exclusive streaming on what's that, Thursday nights. You are going to have one of these leagues be their primary place be on Netflix or Apple TV in the next 10 years.
Which is what
Probably
the
in the next
Pac-12,
7 years. Yep.
which is what the Pac-12 thought would save them, is if they jumped over to Apple TV.
Yep. And it probably and it would have if USC and UCLA had stayed. It would have worked. They would have been ahead of the curve, and then it would have been the Larry Scott where it would have actually worked on the back end, but not on the front end. All right. So the final thing that we got to talk about today is the staying on the business of sports. So the ACC, Ralph, the ACC implosion, which we've been trying to get in for a couple of weeks. This feels like the Pac-12 implosion, where people wanted to deny it. They were like, oh, there's no way. And whole time, if schools are continuing to invest in this legally and there's smoke, private equity meetings, all of this stuff, there's fire. It's happening. It's just a matter of what it looks like. And they're trying to see whether it's going to be legally that they're going to be able to get out and get their grant of rights, like Florida State, Clemson, all them. And if Florida State and Clemson get out first, or Virginia or whoever else is named in these lawsuits, you're in a Pac-12 situation because they signed a horrendous deal with ESPN. And ESPN is like, we're not giving you extra money because we can just do what Fox did with the Pac-12, break this whole thing up, take it and put it in other places, and now we can maneuver this in a different way.
Man, so we knew that Clemson was unhappy because they had traditionally been a powerhouse.
Yeah.
We knew that Florida State was unhappy because they consider themselves to be the traditional cornerstone of the ACC.
Correct.
And then, they turned around, went 13-0 in football before, getting blasted by Georgia last year, and proved that to be possibly still correct. They also have the 2014, I believe, national championship with Jimbo, right?
Yep.
So those two schools, believing themselves to be the cornerstone of the conference, kind of have taken on the role of a UCLA and USC in trying every legal avenue and testing the fence in every possible way to try to get themselves into what they believe will eventually be a two-team league with competition between the Big Ten and the SEC, with the Big Ten actually just surpassing the SEC in per school payout, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
The surprising thing about this has been that no one else in the ACC has really voiced their displeasure until now. North Carolina's jumping on the bandwagon.
Yeah.
And why that's scary is the ACC just moved its headquarters to Charlotte, North Carolina, which means tournaments are played in Charlotte.
Yeah.
Which means tourism dollars for the state that University of North Carolina is supposed to represent. If the president of the University of North Carolina, let's see what this man's name is, Martin Nadelman, if he's not on the same page with the ACC, who has an outgoing president, which it's going to be interesting to see, how all of this shapes up. But if University of North Carolina isn't down with the ACC, that's a huge problem.
Yep.
Because they're supposed to be simpatico. The ACC being headquartered, is University of North Carolina really so displeased with their situation that they want tournament games to be played in Indianapolis or Atlanta or somewhere else? Are they willing to cost their own state money to be able to get out of this contract? That's the fascinating thing to me, because I think the ACC, I've been pushing back because and the truth is, I don't know as much about the ACC as I do about the Pac-12. You and I saw the Pac-12 disaster for what it was the entire time.
Oh,
The entire time.
it was obvious. It was written on the wall, like a blind man could see it, and
But
people
you have
just
this same energy about the ACC. I've
yeah.
noticed you do. You believe that it is inevitable that the ACC goes into the dust.
Yes, 100%. That their only hope is to merge with the Big 12. That is their only hope at this point.
And the Big 12's open to that.
Yeah, the Big 12 is like, come here, come on, you know you want to, and that's what you're going to end up having for most of the ACC schools because Florida State and Clemson are not going to the Big 12. They're going to end up in the SEC probably. And then you're going to have North Carolina and some other team probably end up in the Big Ten. And then you're going to have most of the ACC, like the Syracuses and the, you know, it'll be interesting to see where Miami ends up. Like you're going to have some of these schools end up at different places. And then you're going to have somebody has to be the Cal and Stanford, which end up somewhere, but they're like, we'll take them. And then you're going to have the Oregon States and Washington States. Somebody in that conference is going to get Oregon State and Washington State. And that's why like Rutgers and these other schools that are in the Big Ten already, they're like, whew, whew.
Yeah, because Maryland Rutgers should be ACC schools.
Yes.
Regional.
And they're like, whew, thank God we jumped on the right boat, buddy. Because if we jumped on the other boat, we would be like, Rutgers would end up getting treated. And this is no disparagement to Rutgers, fine university, all of this stuff. They're trying. They're like it's no disparagement to them. But the reality is, they're not as TV attractive, even though they're like we're in New Jersey. That's like saying that Stanford's in California.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, Rutgers, you can absolutely disparage Rutgers because they got a $60 million payout as part of the Big Ten. Meanwhile, you know, your University of Washington going to the national championship, you're getting like 31. You can absolutely, with those goggles on, look at Rutgers and be like, you know what? Screw you guys.
Yep. So we're gonna see because the ACC, their either survival or not is going to impact because what's then going to happen with Wake, Boston College, Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, Syracuse, like those types of schools. Now, if Virginia Tech was doing what they had been doing in the Frank Beamer days and the Michael Vick days and all of that, then maybe it would look different. But now the question is, how does the future look for those schools?
Yeah, no, I worry about a Georgia Tech. I worry about a Virginia, like the high academic schools.
Well, Virginia's going to be fine because apparently they are highly attractive to people.
Well, they got that hoops program.
Yeah.
That goes back and forth between losing in the first round and winning national championships. So I don't know. I wish that wouldn't happen for the ACC. I don't wish what happened to the Pac-12 on anybody. I hated every minute of that. It was just obvious it was going to happen. My whole thing is I think they could probably weather the Clemson Florida State storm, but this North Carolina thing, like they just moved the headquarters to Charlotte. Yep. If Florida State's looking at North Carolina saying you're the key to getting this whole thing, broken up by piling on, because then you got like 1/7 of the conference is upset, including one of the flagship schools, and then God forbid NC State or something like that jumps on board too, then it's over.
100% over. And it is over like this episode of the College Football Apostles. You guys make sure that you like, subscribe, tell a friend about the show, and keep it locked because this is going to be the best spot for college football all year.